Hello and welcome to the Property Talk podcast from RWinvest, bringing you tips and advice on all things property investment.
So, say you've decided to take the plunge and invest in property. You've worked out the benefits of an off-plan purchase, especially as it's coming in below the market value. I suppose by now you've researched the UK market. You've picked Liverpool. It's the best place to invest. It's topped the charts 2 years in a row now for the highest yields and capital growth. I don't know. I'd say you have a couple of options. They look quite good location. How would you start your research then to decide which one might be best?
So that's where due diligence comes in. You really want to understand who you're trusting with your money, because at the end of the day, that's the whole point. You're here to make money. I would research the developers themselves, look into their track record. It's absolutely crucial to make sure you know who it is you're working with and not just, the facade, the face of the company. You really need to know who these developers are.
Yeah, definitely. So would you say that the companies, the developers' previous developments are really important then?
Yeah. There's always going to be a starting point. They're always going to have a first development, so that you can expect that to be the very, very best. But it's great to be able to literally walk into something that they've made before, look around, see the finish of it, the outside of it, because CGIs these days, they can look so good. But the proof is in the pudding, and being able to walk into a development that this developer has already completed, it's crucial.
Yeah, definitely. So say, you were going to go buy, a flat or a house, and you went and saw one of their previous sites. You could look at all the fixtures and fittings, and you could say, oh yeah, this is definitely the kind of thing that I'd like to be investing in. I'm happy with this. Yeah. I suppose compared to something where they've never built it before, so you're guessing. Yeah. I totally understand. So, what sort of other things would you look for aside from their previous work?
It's important to know that they complete developments on time.
Oh, of course.
When we talk about off-plan, I'd say that's one of the major things that people are unhappy with. Everyone wants things now.
Definitely.
But we know that off-plan is the best way to do it, and the wait time is it's annoying, but it's essential in order to get all of the benefits of off-plan.
I guess you commit to a time frame.
Yeah.
You say, okay, I will put this deposit in for X amount of months, and I guess what you're saying is you want to make sure that that's an accurate time frame. Yeah. And you're not going to actually end up waiting double than what you agreed.
So having something that completes on time, or within the frame that is set out by the developers, very, very important.
So how would you find that out? How would you try and find out how it was completed on time? How would you see it?
Again, that's going to be down to track record. That's going to be down to looking at past works and making sure that there wasn't anything untoward in any of their previous developments. Really, what we want to look at is something with a really positive track record of high spec developments, completing on time. On the website there should be construction updates anyway. Groundwork, things from the ground down when it comes to completing a development takes 90% of the time. Once something goes up with a concrete core, the steel frame, it literally just flies. That's 10% of the work.
You can start to see it in front of your own eyes.
Yeah,
I see. So I suppose if you're looking at a construction update and say you looked at January to March, it might look like nothing has really happened. But if you're looking at a previous site, you could follow that full 12 months and check that it was completed on time. I can see how that'd be really, really useful. So what else do you think would be useful for people to look at? What about maybe the brains behind the companies, the people who are the directors and the senior leadership in those companies? Is there any way that we could look at them and see what would be interesting with them?
Basically, what you should do as an investor, you should go online and you should try and find, something akin to a CV. You don't want to invest in a development where the developer used to be a chef. Unless they have had a major turnaround in their life, you want to invest in something where you look at it and you're like, oh right, well they worked in sort of the facades of hotels, or they used to be an architect, or
so
construction companies, something that actually has to do with developing well.
I suppose, and if you had 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 or 5 of them in one company, the combined years of experience, you know that you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing, and they're putting all of that knowledge into the investment that you're now buying.
More brains are better than one.
Yeah, precisely.
And then also, I mean, so you've got the developers themselves, you've got the previous developments, but this isn't money in your pocket yet. So it's kind of crucial for you to take a little look at the previous developments that have completed. Are those investors getting paid? You can offer this assurance period that sounds incredible, but if it sounds too good to be true, sometimes 9 times out of 10 it is.
Yeah, definitely.
So be sure that the investors who invested in those previous sites are actually getting paid what they said they were going to get paid.
Yeah, and even further than that, see if we can find out information on occupancy rates, see if they're actually tenanted and what they're tenanting for. You don't want somebody to think they're going to get a couple of £100 and they end up getting a lot less. It's going to ultimately affect their yield. Yeah. Something I found really interesting when I looked online recently, checking out some companies, is that lots of companies now are starting to use review sites. Quite similar to what you see if you go on holiday. You might use TripAdvisor. Yeah, 100%. There's companies, development companies out there or investment firms who are now using reviews as a way to allow investors to use their voice and say what they liked or disliked about. And I think that gives it a real nice personal touch. You're actually seeing what somebody's been through and what their opinion was at the end of it. Have you seen much of this?
Well, you know what? My previous experience was in a lettings agency, and I can tell you now, not only do investors use that, tenants use that. If a tenant is going to pay top whack for something that is, it looks absolutely incredible, you can guarantee they're going to go online, they're going to find every single review. Are there any issues with it? What kind of neighbors are there? They are literally going to do all of that research as well. So if you as the investor are wanting your 7 to 8% net, you would better sort of guarantee that this is going to be the prime development.
Do we ever tend to see much in the news about different investment companies or developers? Do we ever see much in the press? Is there anything that someone might pick up in their local newspaper or maybe see online?
We certainly should, because, and I mean we do, I don't know if everyone takes a look at the morning news every day, the local news, but the reason why this is so important, this is so crucial, is because developments like these shape your city. The new development going up, that's all of a sudden attracting young moneyed professionals to your city, or they're expanding to the north, and all of a sudden that's becoming its own little borough. So things like these, it's so important to take a look at what is actually happening in your city and what's happening to cities. Why are some, like you mentioned Liverpool earlier, why is Liverpool the best place to invest?
So I guess really the advice to any investor who's on their journey and then they're looking to research and decide who to work with, they should really research the developer thoroughly. And I suppose what we've found is that good companies should really have a real presence online, and we should be able to find out quite a lot about them without having to look too hard.
When you think about it in terms of, it's almost like an investment like this, it's almost like a relationship. You've got to have that, due diligence. You've got to do your research. Is this right for me? Am I happy?
Is it the right match for me?
Is it the right match for me? Because at the end of the day, something like this, long-term investment, long-term relationship. And what we're finding with a lot of our clients is that it's not just, you do one investment and you're done. You do one investment and then you tell your friends about it, and oh my gosh, that came off amazing, and I want my second one, and my friend wants one, and that's how businesses grow. That's how cities grow.
I mean, a trend that I've seen in a lot of the really successful developments that we've seen nationwide is that we see a lot of the same names in terms of maybe architects and construction companies. Do you think, aside from the developer, but some of the other brains that are involved in the specific development, do you think that could be an important element to try and look for known names in the industry?
100%. 100%. And I mean, it's down to what we've been speaking about just now, track record.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see, for example, big architect names like Falcon or Chester Hall, if you see that they've just partnered with a well-known developer, a lot of eyes go to that.
Of course, yeah, because they're so well respected, and aside from the residential work, they do plenty of work.
Hotel-wise.
Hotel, restoration, yeah. So And then that's another company where you can stem off and you can look at what they've done before, their quality of work and what they've inputted into the market. So it all branches out really, but it's just about looking and really making sure that you look past the initial brochure, I suppose. Because, you know, I know that when I look myself, you know, when I was looking for my most recent investment, you get overwhelmed. There's so many options out there.
Spoiled for choice.
And you look at so many different brochures and, you know, ultimately a lot of them can look very similar. They offer a good return, a good assurance period. They're in a relatively good location, and it becomes difficult to really try to decide what's going to be best. Where am I going to be better placed to put my money? And I suppose doing everything that you've suggested here is going to make it a lot clearer. You'll begin to narrow it down and think, actually, these are the chaps I want to work with, maybe because their previous sites are a fantastic standard, or the previous investors online have said that the returns have been amazing.
Or the managing agent has 100% occupancy rate as well. All of the, you know, all of these things, they're so important. And the last thing you want to do, you don't want to get bogged down in, you know, rumours, because the rumours can often be behind the times. So, I mean, Northwest, fantastic place to invest. Manchester, we're a bit past it now, like we've said in our previous podcast. So the rumours are behind the times often. And what you don't want to do, you don't want to be catfished by an amazing looking brochure. Because,
and then it turns out that it's maybe not what it said it was. I mean, I think one of the big things, especially if you're doing this for the first time, is that when you're putting your cash down, you're making a big commitment and it can feel quite daunting. And I suppose doing this research is going to help you build that confidence and really understand what's going to be happening behind the scenes. And you're not going to feel like you're really putting yourself out. You're going to feel really secure in the decision you're making. And I think that would help so many people if they knew what to look at and what direction to go in. So I think this will help a lot of people.
And also, I suppose, at the end of the day, the person who's leading you through this process is a very, very important person. So the agent that you end up going with.
So not the developer?
No, developer, very, very important, obviously, number one. But then again, the person giving you that information, the person actually furnishing you with the knowledge is power, the person giving you all of that information so that you can make the right decision. They're also very important.
I guess you want to be able to get advice from somebody who's going to be giving you general advice on the market and they're not too biased. Of course, every agency will have their own ideas of what's good, but I suppose, you're right, you want to be talking to somebody who feels got your best interests at heart and they're not just talking to you about something because it suits them. How would you kind of figure out if somebody was looking after you or looking after their own interests?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, realistically speaking, there's only going to be one best investment on the market for you, and it's down to your game plan as an investor. And if your agent doesn't ask you, tell me about your 5-year plan. What do you want out of this? Is yield more important? Is capital appreciation more important? If they're not asking you about your business plan
and building it bespoke to you, of course,
then you need to sort of question. But then again, if your agent is asking you those things and they can back it up with why,
facts and figures, from independent sources, independent pieces of information, like we were saying before, news articles, reviews, but it builds that full picture where you know that they've got your best interests at heart. You've done your own research on top of everything that they've helped you with, and you can really start to build that picture, that real 360, and you think, right, this is definitely the direction that I need to be going in.
I mean, I personally, I would never really start talking full on shop about a development with an investor until we've already gotten past that. I want to know about them. I want to know what they want. I want to know the whole point. Why have you called me? How much money are you looking to make? You know, those are all things that is so important to know before you can say, oh, we've got this development for you.
Yeah, of course. And then there's lots of different developments that would be better for different reasons. And then before you get into anything else, you need to be working with somebody who's taking your true interests to heart, and what they're recommending is going to be perfect for what you've got in line. I mean, I say this, but I originally had a plan many years ago, which is what I wanted to follow, and I spoke to somebody and they said, well, are you sure? This is actually going to be much better, and they pushed me in a totally different path, and it's ended up being a lot better for me in the long run. But at first I thought that they were just trying to sort of recommend what suited them, but after doing my own research, it really made me realise that they are truly trying to help me make the most money. With these new markets, we've mentioned we were looking at Manchester, we are now looking at Liverpool. We get developers that maybe used to specialise in different areas. Do you think it might be important to work with somebody who is maybe more local or more familiar with the area? Do you think that would make a blind bit of difference?
No, I'd definitely say that's important, 100%. So obviously, everyone knows what's happening on the market. Everyone can see property trends. London developers, they will have developed London because they know London.
Of course.
Manchester developers, they will have developed Manchester city centre. They will have gone to Salford and seen it grow because of Media City and all these amazing things. But then, do they know anything about other cities?
I know what you mean. I mean, I don't know the Midlands very well, for example, so I certainly wouldn't know where to build a block of flats down there. I don't know where would be popular.
Yeah, or where the opportunities for capital appreciation are. Where are they? I mean, if you don't, for example, I couldn't go to Birmingham and know for a fact that Digbeth is going to be amazing because I don't know. I only know that one name in Birmingham.
You know what? I mean, if you're on the ground and you've been in an area for a long time, then you really are able to pinpoint the exact streets, locations. You can see different things that are going on, and you can really jump on those opportunities, and having that locality is going to drive a real difference in the knowledge that you have. Yeah, I actually see what you mean there. That's a really good point.
And I mean, you can't know everything about everything. So if your experience is London specifically, you won't have been keeping up with, say, Liverpool's news. You won't know the £14 billion being spent in regeneration projects in that city because you're just not there to really know it. So I'd say local developers, they will probably corner that market more successfully than outside developers.
One thing I just really wanted to pick your brains on before we left is I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they said to me that one of the things that they're most worried about, say they've done all of this due diligence, but one of the things that they're most worried about is when they put their initial deposit in, what happens with that money? How do they know what it's being spent on, or how do they know if the development's funding is in place? What advice would you give them?
Definitely make sure that you know how the build is being funded. Is it fully investor-led? Is there funding in place? If there's funding in place, is there a certain amount of...
What does investor-led mean, sorry?
So investor-led, means that the investors, when you put your funds in, that the funding that you are putting in, that is building the development itself. Or if you have, for example, developer finance, is the developer finance building the development itself?
Yes, I know exactly what you
sense?
mean.
Okay.
So most developments will use a small portion of the investor funds and then be propped up by developer finance. So is there a way to know if the funding is in? Should the company be able to present this to you? Is this something that you should be able to find out?
That's something your agent should know, or your broker. You should be able to phone in. They should know how this development is going to be built. They should also know how your funds are going to be held. You can't just have a development on the market and be like, it's going to be built. How? By whose money? Is the developer cash rich, or do they have a special purpose vehicle to hold those funds, and is it ring fenced just for this build, or can they use it on others?
So tell me a little bit more. You've mentioned special purpose vehicle there. Now I know how they work, but maybe some of our listeners won't. How do they sort of work, and what protection does that give an investor?
So say there was a developer and they're called Liverpool Developer 1.
Okay.
Right? So that's their overall name. And then they decide, we're going to build a development called Liverpool Development 2.
Okay, yes.
So
I'm with you.
They would create an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, for Liverpool Development 2.
And that's separate from their whole company brand.
Exactly. So even if they had 20 past developments on the go, 20 future developments on the go, the money that's invested in Liverpool Development 2 can only be used for Liverpool Development 2.
Because they're making use of this special purpose vehicle, it keeps everything, as you said before, ring fence, and all your monies are safe in that one particular investment, and they can't be pulled and used anywhere else. Am I understanding that right?
Exactly.
Thanks for listening to the Property Talk podcast. If you want to get in touch with either myself, Jennifer, or
I'm Rowena,
then our details will be at the bottom of this, and we'll hope to hear from you soon.